Hi there. I'm James, a fourth-year politics and governance student at TMU. Today we're talking about Smallsonian, though technically, 11 Labs is doing the talking since I've got a nasty throat infection. So, what's Smallsonian? The idea started with a Reddit post and evolved into a full-on SaaS app aimed at small historical societies in English-speaking countries. Think of those community-run groups that preserve local history, many of which rely on volunteers and paper records. The goal was to give them an easy-to-use digital tool where volunteers could use their phones to upload images, text descriptions, and metadata to a central, searchable online database. Planned features included creating, editing, and deleting both collections and individual items, user-based permissions for approval workflows, and the ability to search for specific records or contributors. As someone with limited coding experience, I decided to build it using Bubble.io, a no-code development platform. At the start of the semester, the project was a complete blank slate. No wireframes, no backend, just an idea. Fast forward to now, and we've got a working prototype, with most of the key features in place. A few things are still outstanding, like bulk uploads, downloads, reporting tools, and payment processing. But we've come a long way. The journey was, honestly, a roller coaster. Some weeks felt like everything clicked, while others were pure chaos. Planning the app flow, mapping user journeys, and figuring out what assumptions I was making were surprisingly tough. But the hardest part, hands down, was talking to actual users. I'd never done interviews without trying to sell a product, so switching into listening mode was awkward at first. But it paid off. I learned a lot. For example, some volunteers feared losing control over physical records if they went digital. Others cared more about simple search functions than fancy features. That feedback directly shaped the design. We simplified the UI, prioritized core features, and built in multiple permission levels for added control. Support-wise, I got a lot out of working alongside my classmates. Even though we were all working on different projects, just having a community of people tackling similar challenges made a huge difference. Whether it was bouncing around design ideas, sharing feedback on user interviews, or just being in the same room building something, there was this quiet accountability that helped me stay focused. Some of the best suggestions I got came from informal conversations in class, like simplifying my data model or rethinking how to structure the user permissions. That peer-to-peer input, along with seeing everyone else push through their own setbacks, really elevated the experience. It didn't feel like I was doing it alone. The biggest setback I ran into was honestly just wrestling with Bubble's grouping and spacing system. I underestimated how tricky it would be to make the UI responsive, especially as the screen size shrinks. Making things look good on both desktop and mobile turned into this frustrating puzzle. I spent about 2 weeks just trying to untangle overlapping elements, collapsing groups, and dealing with margins that behaved differently depending on the layout. It really slowed down my momentum, and I had to dig into tutorials, forums, and a lot of trial and error before I started making real progress again. I also learned a lot about myself. I'm more resourceful than I thought. I taught myself Bubble, built wireframes, pivoted designs, and even debugged workflows I barely understood at first. I also realized I enjoy solving real-world problems more than hypothetical ones. Talking to users, mapping their frustrations, and figuring out how tech could help. It felt meaningful. In terms of how I've advanced in my field, while this isn't a political science project per se, it intersects with public policy through heritage preservation and civic engagement. I got to apply skills in leadership, decision-making, and especially communicating across difference, bridging tech and non-tech worlds, young and older generations, digital and analog mindsets. Next steps? I'd like to add those missing features and run a small pilot with 1 or 2 historical societies, maybe in rural Ontario or the Maritimes. Long term, who knows? I'd love to see this tool help communities preserve their stories and objects before they're lost. The strongest lesson I learned was the importance of speaking with users early and often. At first, I was hesitant to do outreach before I had something polished to show, but I quickly realized that waiting would have been a mistake. Those early conversations helped shape the direction of the app in ways I couldn't have anticipated. For example, one potential user mentioned how their society had limited internet access in their archives, which made me rethink assumptions about when and where the app would be used. Another emphasized the need for a really simple way to train volunteers with low-tech experience. If I had waited until I had a finished product, I would have missed those insights and built something less useful. Early feedback helped me avoid building features no one needed and focus on the core problems users actually face. It also made the whole project feel more grounded, like I was solving a real problem for real people. My biggest takeaway from the course? Learning to embrace uncertainty. You don't need all the answers before you start. In fact, some of the best insights come after you build and test. The course gave me a structured way to be curious, to fail safely, and to actually ship something real.